Please consider dating me with marriage in mind. The one who confessed so passionately was Tom, whom I met through a friend's introduction. He was 3 years younger than me, and he told me he had fallen in love with me at first sight. Since I was also thinking it was about time to consider marriage, I accepted his proposal, and we got married a year later. My name is Emily. I've always admired living abroad, and now I work for a multinational company at the age of 34. My husband, Tom, is younger but is the type that takes leadership. And it wouldn't be an exaggeration to say he's quite the traditional domineering husband. However, I actually didn't mind that. Having lived alone for a long time, doing household chores was normal for me, and I didn't find it painful, plus I enjoy cooking. So Tom hardly does any housework, and I take care of it by myself. When we go out, Tom leads the way, so I can enjoy myself without thinking about anything. I think we have a pretty good balance. Things started to change when my mother passed away. During work, I got a call from my dad saying my mother, who had a chronic illness, had collapsed. I had hurried out and arrived at the hospital in about 2 hours to say my final goodbye to her. When I stayed at my parents' house for the funeral and contacted Tom, he said he couldn't come on such short notice because of work. And he didn't make it to the wake. He did come to the funeral, but apparently, he couldn't prepare his mourning clothes himself, and after I hastily arranged a rental. He complained that I should have prepared it from the start. Amidst my grief and busyness, I brushed off his complaints, but it seemed Tom didn't like that and was in a bad mood the whole time. Since then, it feels like we've had more arguments even after coming home. Well, I guess it's normal to have some fights after being married for 3 years, but lately, Tom has been particularly confrontational. Still the traditional head of the household, he keeps telling me to prepare this and do that, and though I've refused out of annoyance. He doesn't know where anything is, so even preparing for his own business trips takes a long time. Moreover, he messes up the house while complaining, leaving a trail of clutter. Eventually, I realized it's easier for me to just do it rather than cleaning up after him, so I'm not exactly being submissive. But I've been taking care of most of the chores. The first anniversary of Mom's passing is next week, so I'm going to prepare for it. When I said that, Tom responded in an annoyed tone. Oh, I have an important meeting on that day. What should I do? Even though I had mentioned it well in advance, I don't understand why he would say such a thing. What? You mean you're not going? At that, Tom let out an exaggerated sigh. It's not like that, but it's going to be tough giving instructions to my subordinates, you know? He had been promoted recently and seemed happy to have subordinates, mentioning them to me at every opportunity. I feel like sighing myself. Anyway, please remember. I emphasized my request. And then, on the eve of the first anniversary. When I came home from work, Tom was sulking in the living room, drinking beer. Sorry, I'm late. I got caught up with overtime. He must be upset because I was late returning and dinner would be delayed. I've been waiting for over an hour, you know. Just as I thought. But it's only an hour. If he can't make anything himself, he could have bought something. I did inform him what time I would return, so he could have done something himself. Suppressing the urge to say this, I offered him the takeout I had bought. I thought it would be too late if I cooked, so I bought this instead. Then, Tom slammed his beer glass down. These again? Haven't you been cutting corners a bit too much lately? Again? The last time I bought a takeout was about half a month ago. Indeed, I've been busy lately, and the meals have been simple, but I've been mindful of nutritional balance and hardly ever bought ready-made food. So, his complaint seemed unjustified. As I pondered whether to argue back, Tom, perhaps misunderstanding something, pressed further. You can't say anything because it's true, right? Take care of the household properly. Lately, you've been coming home late. Saying you have overtime. Are you having an affair or something? Tom shouted that in anger. At his words, all the frustration I had been holding back exploded. Enough is enough. If I'm coming home late, there's nothing wrong if you prepare dinner. Since you can't cook, it's okay to buy takeout or some ready-made dishes, right? I always let you know when I'll be late, and I'm even doing your share of the housework. So how can you say such things? Then, Tom glared at me. Huh? You're 3 years older than me, you know? I could have married someone in their 20s, but I chose to marry you, who's older. You should be grateful and at least do that much. Without me, who else would take you? You'd be in trouble if I left you, right? How could he say that? I was so furious that I couldn't hold back anymore. Then go ahead and marry a younger girl. When we were dating and even before we got married, I asked you if it was okay that I was older, didn't I? You said it was fine, that's why we got married. It's not like I needed you to take me, I would have been fine on my own. Tom sneered at my words. Do whatever you want. I want a divorce. With that, Tom took his beer and food and went to his room. We've had fights before, but this was something else. This is just too much hassle. For now, I decided to eat the food and calm myself down. He must have been irritated because he was hungry. That's what I thought as I filled my stomach, but the feeling wouldn't subside. Tomorrow is the first anniversary of my mom's passing, and this is just trouble. After some time, I called out from outside Tom's room. We're leaving at 8 tomorrow, so I'll wake you up around 7. There was no response, but I could sense he was awake, so he must have heard me. With that, I went to sleep. The next morning, when I got up early, Tom was already gone. The luggage I had prepared was still in the room. It didn't seem like he had left before me. Where had he disappeared to? He wouldn't answer his phone. And there was no reply to my messages. With no other choice, I left a voicemail and prepared to leave by myself. I finally got through to Tom while waiting for the train at the platform. I've decided to attend the meeting, I can't leave it to my subordinates. As soon as he answered, he said that, and I was taken aback. Wait a minute. But my voice was drowned out by the noise of the train, and the call ended. Feeling a mix of anger and resignation, I stood there dumbfounded. But before I could think any further, the train arrived. Carrying luggage for 2, I boarded the train. When I arrived at my parents' house, my dad asked with concern. Where's Tom? I didn't want to worry my dad, who had already been down since my mom passed away. Taking a deep breath, I managed a smile. Sorry, he said he had an important meeting. He was going to come, but with his recent promotion, it seems like a critical meeting. So I told him to go ahead and attend it. My dad nodded understandingly. I see, he's working hard. It's a shame we can't see him, but your mom would understand. Tell him to visit anytime. His words made my heart ache, but I managed to keep smiling. The day went by without any word from Tom, and I didn't reach out either, letting the night pass. I planned to stay at my parents' house tonight and return home tomorrow. That was the plan in the first place, so there was no need to contact Tom. Still, he was probably sulking, so maybe tomorrow I'll make his favorite hamburger. With that thought, I fell asleep. The next day, I left my parents' house and returned home around noon. I decided to go shopping after setting down my luggage, and entered the living room to place my things. As expected, the laundry was left untouched. Sighing at the thought that he still couldn't use the washing machine, I threw the neglected laundry in with mine and started a load. Taking a moment to breathe, I returned to the living room and noticed something on the table. Approaching it, I couldn't believe my eyes. There was a note that mentioned divorce. Why? I stared intently at the note. Is he saying we should get a divorce? I pulled out my phone from my bag. It should be his lunch break around this time. I wasn't sure if Tom would answer, but to my surprise, he picked up immediately. Tom? What does this mean? He laughed on the other end of the line. What do you mean? It's exactly what it says. Who needs a wife who doesn't do housework and is older, right? That's why I said divorce. Without you, I can remarry someone younger. After all, a wife is a status symbol, right? With you being older, I can't even boast about you to others. When my subordinates ask about my wife, it's hard to dodge the question. I was speechless at his reasoning. I had no words to return. If you don't want a divorce, then do your housework properly. I'll be home as usual today, so buy some beer. If you don't like it, take that paper to the city court. It's all the same to me. With that, the call ended. I couldn't utter a single word of protest before the call ended. This must be what being at a loss for words feels like. Tom probably thought I would comply if he said that. I was just tired of asking and pleading for him to do things. But Tom must have thought I was doing the housework because I didn't want to be separated from him or abandoned. He must have thought I wouldn't stand up to him because he was the head of the household. Sometimes people envy me for having a younger husband, but really, there's nothing noteworthy about him, so saying he's younger is just convenient. He's average in looks, personality, and income, with nothing distinctive about him, so mentioning he's younger was a handy descriptor. I was concerned about our age difference when we got married, but now we're both in our 30s, and the age gap is just 3 years. If he were significantly younger, I might feel more affectionate. But being constantly referred to as the older wife by someone nearly my age is unpleasant. I decided to pack up and leave promptly. I felt a sense of relief. I thought we were having a fairly good life, but that's over now. I can live without Tom. With that realization, I felt incredibly liberated and called my boss to take a few days off. Fortunately, it was just after the busy period, so I was allowed to take about a week off. Since I'm getting divorced, I'll have to sort out my belongings. I didn't have much stuff, so packing was quick. I stored large items in a rental room, loaded my car with clothes and essentials, and on a whim, drove to a hot spring resort. It seemed to be the off-season for inns, so I easily booked a room at a low price and drove there excitedly. While enjoying the hot springs and relaxing in my room, my phone rang. Emily. Didn't I tell you to buy beer today? Where are you? It's time that Tom gets home. Hearing his words, I suddenly remembered and couldn't help but laugh. I'm at a hot spring right now. What? A hot spring? Why? What do you mean? Well, you're the one who said it's divorce if I don't like it, right, Tom? Imagining my ex-husband's flustered state made me laugh even more. Wait, you took that seriously? Yes, of course. Why? Because you're the one who said we should get a divorce, Tom. Have you already forgotten what happened a few hours ago? Then I heard a clearly flustered voice. Hey, you're joking, right? You're just at a spa or something, right? Then I'll go get some takeout, so come back home early. His sudden change in tone, acting like a kind husband, made me unable to stop laughing. It's about an hour and a half by car. There's an open-air bath, and it's really nice. You going out to buy your own meal? What a surprise. I've moved out all my stuff so I won't have to come back, so do as you please with your life. Tom was desperately pleading for me to come back. But, of course, I had no intention of returning. You're the one who said we should get divorced, are you stupid? It's so obvious you were trying to use divorce as a threat to make me comply. I told you, I can live without you. Now you can divorce the old wife and go marry a younger one, if you can manage that. Tom fell completely silent. I think it's none of my business, but you should really consider moving out of that apartment soon. It was then that Tom finally spoke. Why? His voice was almost a whisper. Because, think about your income. If you keep living there, you'll go bankrupt soon. From now on, you'll have to outsource cleaning, laundry, and cooking, or eat out, right? That will cost money, and if most of your salary goes to rent, won't you be in trouble? You used to say you were supporting me, but my salary is almost double yours. I never thought I was supporting you, but if anything, I was the one supporting. Also, you act all bossy because you got one subordinate, but did you know I have more subordinates? And even more under them? I didn't talk much about work because Tom would get in a bad mood, but in terms of position and salary, I was higher. Living together, you'd think he would have noticed, but it seemed like he was only just realizing it. With his high pride and patriarchal attitude, Tom might have been maintaining his self-esteem by looking down on me. Now that he can't look down on me anymore, he must be feeling down. In a way, I shredded his pride as a payback for everything. The reason I did the housework and didn't say anything against your patriarchal attitude was partly because I was being lenient since you're younger, and also because it was too much trouble to ask you to do anything because you're so hopeless at housework. It's not because I couldn't manage without you. I was just taking care of your chores along with mine. So, naturally, when you said it's divorce if I don't do them, I chose divorce. That's why we're strangers now. Goodbye. Having said all I wanted, I hung up. Feeling refreshed, I savored the inn's cuisine. Later, as expected, Tom reached out wanting to reconcile, but I cheerfully told him, I'm older, so I can't go back to you. Probably, younger women didn't pay him any attention. Tom seemed to have given up and cancelled the apartment lease. For the property division, I had a lawyer step in and demanded more considering I had been burdened with housework. Tom, trying to save costs, didn't hire a lawyer, so the settlement was largely in my favor. It turns out Tom's only subordinate was complaining about his poor guidance and didn't see him as a boss, which caused more trouble when Tom found out. It's important to take care of your subordinates. As for me, there had been talks about working at the overseas headquarters for a while. Formerly, I had declined them, not wanting to inconvenience Tom, but now I decided to accept it. I'm currently preparing for the transition. I've caused my dad some worry, but we've started practicing FaceTime so we can easily stay in touch even when I'm abroad. I'm satisfied that I will be doing the job I've always dreamed of since I was young. I'm ready to give it my all. Are you ready for the move? My husband, approaching me with a look that seemed to say I was no longer needed. After treating me like an ATM, now he's trying to kick me out of the house. Why do I always have to suffer like this? Swearing revenge, I readily agreed to leave the house. But there was a strategy behind this, aimed at getting back at him. My name is Carolyn, and I'm 46 years old. I work as a municipal employee at the City Hall. After graduating from a community college, I dedicated myself to my job, and before I knew it, I had reached 25 years of service. I married my husband, Michael, when I was 25. It was a shotgun wedding, and we had a boy the following year. Our son has now become a college student. He moved out to attend a university in another state, living on his own. To be honest, our marriage hasn't been very good. Since our son left, we hardly talk, and our relationship has grown even colder. Especially since my husband's domineering attitude has gotten worse, reminiscent of our early marriage days. It seemed like he had restrained himself after our son was born, but his true nature began to resurface. It's become routine to be criticized for the dinners I painstakingly prepare, with comments like "this is bland" or "make it again." No matter how carefully I do the laundry or cleaning, I constantly hear, "Can't you even do household chores properly with an associate degree?" Or, "Why did I even marry such a foolish woman?" My husband graduated from a prestigious private university and works in sales at a major food trading company. He probably thinks that me, with my associate degree and government job, am not good enough for him. He often makes belittling remarks. I've voiced my concerns a few times about sharing household chores, saying, "Since we both work, can't we divide the housework?" But he insists it's natural for the wife to do the housework. You get off work on time since it's a government job, and our son is grown up. So you should manage on your own. I countered, our son being grown up applies to you too. But that seemed to annoy him even more, leading him to say, if you can't handle both, quit your job. He says to quit easily, but I have reasons why I can't. Our living expenses, mortgage, and our son's tuition fees are mostly covered by my salary. I've tried discussing this several times. Could you at least help with the mortgage or part of the tuition fees? However, he responded, how I spend the money I earn is my business, and only contributed the bare minimum. We've had separate bank accounts since we got married, so I had no choice but to accept this arrangement. You'd think one might get used to such a marriage over 20 years, but recently something has been bothering me. My husband started asking me for money frequently, using various excuses. There's a family gathering at my parents' home. So what? I need to give some pocket money to my nieces and nephews, so can you chip in about $100? That was the beginning. While it's undeniable that family ties are important, it was suspicious that he wouldn't contribute himself. However, refusing would undoubtedly lead to being labeled a cold-hearted woman, so I complied. But from that day on, my dad got injured and has to be hospitalized. That's terrible. We should visit right away. No need for a visit, but can you afford $400 for a consolation gift? Or some distant relative apparently got married. A distant relative? From your father's side or your mother's side? Don't pry. I need about $300 for a congratulatory gift, so get it ready. Before I knew it, in addition to regular expenses, I was drained of tens of thousands by my husband. My distrust of my husband grew. Even though he continued to ask for money, I started to dodge and evade his requests. As a result, his mood worsened rapidly, and he began taking it out on me again. "Don't you even want to do something for your in-laws?" Every time he saw me, my husband would complain. "Why do I have to put up with so much?" Sometimes, I felt like I was about to cry. Around the same time, I was also concerned about my husband coming home late. There were days when he would come home reeking of deodorant spray, and I even found women's earrings in his shirt pocket. The word affair was flashing in my mind. "Coming home late, are you busy with work?" "I have various obligations like entertaining clients, unlike your cushy government job." His dismissal of my job, which I take pride in, saddened me. "You just stare at a computer all day, right? Can't even tell if that's considered work," he would say, laughing mockingly. "Don't mock me." There were times when I raised my voice in response. We started having more of these arguments. Why did he need to say such things? Especially when I'm the one covering our monthly expenses. I miss the early days of our relationship. He used to be so kind. I can't even remember what drew me to him and why I married him. Then one day, my bad feeling proved to be right. On a rare occasion when my husband came home early. "You're home earlier than usual today. There's something I need to talk about." "A talk?" I asked, puzzled. Out of the blue, he said, "Get out of this house." Having suspected his infidelity, I asked, "Do you want to be with your lover?" His response, "You catch on fast," confirmed my suspicions. Women's intuition is truly frightening. According to him, his lover was the hostess of a snack bar they often used for business entertainment, a woman who, unlike me, was charming, good-natured, and beautiful. "She really understands me. Apparently, she has a child from a previous marriage, so we'll live here together," he said. Sharing details I didn't want to hear. I told my husband, "Give me one night to think about it," and locked myself in my room. From behind me, his cold words hit, "Leave as soon as you can." After being treated like an ATM and now being kicked out of the house. The money I was drained of must have been funneled to his mistress. His late returns under the guise of business entertainment might have been lies, meeting his lover instead. Why must I always be the one to suffer like this? Fed up with my husband's unreasonable laziness, I decided to enact a plan. The next morning. "Are you done packing for the move?" To his sarcastic question, I coolly replied, "I'll be out today." My refreshing demeanor surprised him, but he was pleased, saying, "Finally, I can escape this dreary life. It's better to have a beautiful woman in a home that's just for sleeping, even if it's plain." "You lack flair." "I'll take all my belongings with me." "That's necessary. Otherwise, we can't start our new life," he said with a smug face. By we, he meant his mistress and himself. I told him as a condition for leaving the house, I want a divorce. I didn't want to end as a pitiful wife who easily acknowledged infidelity and just left. "I'll divorce this man myself." I pulled out the divorce papers I had prepared for such an occasion. Imagining a future with his mistress, my husband, without hesitation, filled in the divorce papers, saying, "Consider it done." That afternoon, I packed my belongings and left the house. I feel liberated. My husband declared loudly enough to be heard at the entrance. His good mood and smirking were only for the moment. I submitted the divorce papers to the court, explained the situation to my colleagues, and took a few days off. Since this was all so sudden, I hadn't signed a lease for a new place yet. For the time being, I decided to stay in my son, Alex's place. My face must have looked refreshingly relieved after a long time. As my son greeted me with a relieved smile. "It's finally over, isn't it? The real challenge starts now." "I'm on your side, Mom." "Thank you." The curtain rose on my revenge. A week later, a familiar number called. No doubt about it. It was my husband. Or rather, my ex-husband now. I initially ignored the calls, but they were so persistent that I had no choice but to answer. After taking a moment, I answered the phone only to hear my ex-husband, livid, ranting, "Hey. What do you think you're doing? Today was the end of the month. The day when various payments were due." "What are you talking about?" "This month's payments." "What do you mean?" "We're divorced, aren't we?" Why would I have any obligation to pay? What? Indeed, there's no surprise in my ex-husband's outburst. This month, neither living expenses nor the mortgage had been paid from my salary. And the amount would be shocking. Our apartment was in an upscale residential area. Just the mortgage could cost thousands of dollars. How am I supposed to handle this amount? Your salary was. His voice trailed off in astonishment. I decided to explain everything from scratch. We were like separated within the house, so I didn't feel the need to explain. But I was promoted to a department head after being recognized for my achievements. Department head, not section chief. Since when? I think it was the year Alex entered high school. My salary is probably more than double yours. What? My ex-husband couldn't hide his shock at each revelation. I kept this a secret too, but I've been investing for educational funds since Alex was born. The assets are now worth hundreds of thousands. Having separate bank accounts from the beginning really helped. It saved me from you knowing about the money movements. Can't be. I continued calmly. I had thought about divorcing earlier, but I figured there was no point for him in giving up a convenient ATM. So I led my ex-husband to agree to the divorce willingly. I had played the part of a dutiful, obedient wife on purpose, giving him money to lead him on. I had told my son about the planned divorce well in advance and encouraged him to attend a university far away from home. All of this was part of the plan. After I explained everything, my ex-husband fell silent, unable to say anything. How does it feel to be countered by a wife you look down upon for being a community college graduate and working an easy government job? He probably never expected me to have such clarity. He seemed unable to retort. It's strange that he never questioned how we managed to live a middle-class lifestyle or better. Naturally, we are divorced now, so I have no obligation to make any payments, including for this month and henceforth. If you want, that apartment is in your name, isn't it? Shouldn't you be the one to pay the mortgage? Where are you now? Huh? I'm coming to pick you up, so tell me where you are, my ex-husband managed to say after a struggle. I even asked your office, but they said you're on a few days off and didn't know where you are. How am I supposed to live now? He muttered under his breath. And for a good reason, as I had arranged with my workplace and son to disappear from my ex-husband's radar. Of course, I had also informed my parents and relatives. It seems my ex-husband was now at a dead end. You could just earn your own living. Though, with your debts, you won't be able to live as lavishly as before, I said coldly. And I could hear him gasp. How did you know? A private investigator can find out easily. Apparently, my ex-husband had been squandering most of his salary on gambling. He was in debt, and I had been covering the repayments with the living expenses I paid every month. You're foolish to even lavish gifts on your mistress. I'll return the words you once said to me. How could I have married such a fool? My relentless counterattack left my ex-husband speechless again. After a long silence, I was wrong, can't you come back? He suddenly asked in a soft voice. I was wrong about everything. I want to apologize, so please give me your address. I want to apologize in person, he lied. Trying to smooth things over. Since he still hadn't learned his lesson, I decided to reveal 2 more truths to my ex-husband. By the way, have you checked the mailbox? What's this all of a sudden? You haven't seen it yet, have you? There should be a bill for alimony. My ex-husband might not realize, but I never mentioned anything about an amicable divorce. Naturally, I have the right to demand alimony from him. There's one more thing. Is there still something else? Haven't you received a notice from his university? What notice? About the tuition fee withdrawal. What? Yes, I had asked my son to change the account for tuition fee withdrawals to my husband's name. The tuition fee for the upcoming semester will be withdrawn soon. Wait a minute. Let's talk this over calmly. I am perfectly calm. At least he didn't end up attending the same prestigious private university as my ex-husband, which is a relief in itself. My bright son worked hard and, despite my ex-husband's objections, managed to enroll in a more affordable national university in the countryside. Still, the tuition fee for just the first semester runs into thousands of dollars. The deadline for the alimony is also approaching, so please make the transfer soon. Please, have mercy. Why don't you stop this disgraceful behavior? I'm done associating with you." With that, I hung up the phone. Later, through the grapevine, I heard that my ex-husband, having lost my support, was forced to sell the apartment we lived in. He's now living in a dilapidated share house in a building that's 50 years old. Desperate without the financial support, my ex-husband frantically tried to reach out to me multiple times, hoping to rekindle our relationship. I don't know what kind of person his mistress was, but the fact that he didn't rely on her probably speaks volumes about her character. I also learned later that, to add insult to injury, my ex-husband was eventually abandoned by his mistress and left all alone. I had the detective agency investigate her as well. And surprisingly, it turned out she didn't have any children, contrary to what my ex-husband believed. He was the only one who was serious about the relationship. He was thoroughly played for a fool. After treating me like an ATM and then kicking me out of the house, I hope he reflects on his actions. Burdened with debt he accumulated himself and the alimony owed to me, he turned to his parents for help. But they couldn't forgive the terrible way he treated his wife and turned him away. Disowned by his parents, my ex-husband now has no one to turn to and is lost. As for me, I'm finally free from the hassle and leading a comfortable life. With the assets from my investments and the alimony from my ex-husband, I purchased a new apartment. On weekends, Alex comes over, and we enjoy some tea and study together. To my surprise, he aspires to be a public servant like me. It fills me with joy to see him studying hard for the National Civil Service exam, taking my advice to heart. I've returned to work and expressed my gratitude to my superiors and colleagues by distributing thank you sweets for their support. This ordeal has reaffirmed my belief that diligence and perseverance are always rewarded in the end. I plan to live by this principle moving forward.